Okay, so this is where, before we start talking about filling out the middle and late section, I want to bring up the whole idea of crop rotation. Is there anyone here who's not familiar with even those words of crop rotation? Okay. So the whole idea is just remembering not to plant the same thing season after season or year after year in the same spot. And I'll talk about why. So it can be very simple or very complex, just like your crop plan, but then once you start thinking of your garden in terms of rotation, it'll be a process that'll come pretty naturally to you. You'll know that, oh, I had cucumbers here in my mid-season, I can't plant my pumpkin there because they're in the same family, they attract the same bugs, they eat the same way. They're different plants, but they're the same family, and I'll kind of explain now as I kind of go through this. Just like this is a crop plan, it's also your rotation. Because you're not following anything with a crop from the same family. And even though, you may not think that you have to think this way in terms of a backyard garden, the bugs that eat, say your cucumbers, do not care about your tomatoes. The bugs that eat your tomatoes don't care about your salad. When you move these items around, a newly hatched bug will come out where your tomato plant was. He won't see a tomato there, and he will die. So it's, it's really an ideal way to manage that. But you need to be able to move items around to kind of thwart the way the bugs and the molds and how they all work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's our very complex crop plan again. And I hope I'm able to get the point across that in no way does this have to be your crop plan unless you really want it to look like this. Please.
Can I just ask, as you're talking about the early, mid, and late.
Yeah.
So let's just say I had some garden boxes and I want to farm the heck out of them.
Yeah.
Do I fill them all with early and then, like, at a certain time, I pull it all out and fill it with middle and pull it out? Or are you suggesting that we leave some open space in case my early stuff is going gangbusters?
So
Do you know what I mean? Like,
I do
there's
know what you
always
mean.
that point at which it's still going strong. I don't want
Yeah.
to pull. I think that's my biggest issue that I have in my garden, is I let things wallow too long, because I'm like, I
Right.
put all of this time and investment into it, I don't want to pull it out while it's
Right.
still doing well.
And I think that's a total matter of choice, because if you like what's in the ground, I wouldn't be super quick to rip it out if you like what you're growing. But if you're looking for that variety, then you would want to grow a couple different things for a certain time. Then you get them out. Then your next layer of stuff. What a commercial grower would do is exactly what you're saying. They would grow the bed, harvest the bed, plant something else, and you just kind of repeat that over the course of your growing season, keeping in mind what season you're in, if you're in early, mid, late. So, but if you've got a great stand of Swiss chard in one of your garden boxes, and it keeps regrowing every time you cut it, then I can see why you wouldn't want to necessarily pull it. So in its simplest terms, it's remembering not to plant the same families immediately after each other in the same spot. Why is this important? I kind of touched on it a little bit, but different families of crop plants have different nutritional needs. Anything in the cabbage family is a very heavy nitrogen feeder. So if you were to plant broccoli, pull it out, and then plant cauliflower, your broccoli may do great, and your cauliflower is going to have yellow leaves and a very small cauliflower head, because the broccoli took all your nitrogen. So it works like that with literally every crop family. They all pull the same types of nutrients from the soil. So you have the different nutritional needs. different crop families add different benefits to the soil. So think in terms of like carrots. You have these giant tap roots that, go down a foot or so. They're busting up all that hard soil. That's a great benefit, you have some crop plants that leave beneficial residues in the soil. Like anything in the onion family typically leaves this residue in the soil where weeds really don't sprout very well after all. So, by kind of mixing it up a little bit, you're getting the benefit of that previous crop, what it does for your soil. Different families, like I said before, don't attract the same bugs. One of the worst bugs that I ever dealt with is a cucumber beetle. And all they do is they go on in and they kind of chew on the vines, and next thing you know, your whole cucumber vine is dead from that chew mark all the way down. So really the only thing you can do about that, that cucumber plant's a loss, but I know I'm not going to plant watermelon there, or cantaloupe, or anything in those vine and crop families. I'll have to move that to a different spot. And in doing so, you're kind of preventing the cucumber bug problem in that one area. Different crop families don't have the same disease issues. I'm sure everyone here has seen in their garden, you're halfway through your tomato season and all of a sudden the leaves start getting brown, or you start getting, weird black spots on the end of your tomatoes. Those blights that affect tomatoes don't do anything to spinach, or they don't do anything to Swiss chard, So it's important, especially with these kind of fungus type of diseases, that you don't keep planting a plant in that area where that fungus is for the next season. Please.
How far do the little things travel? If you've got a 4x8, and so, you planted your cucumbers in 1/2 of the 4x8
Sure.
width, can it just wander that extra, 2 feet, that extra foot?
It can, but there's kind of a little corollary to that, to where, cucumbers are real heavy nitrogen feeders, heavy feeders in general. If you're putting a new vining plant in fresh soil that hasn't been depleted by something from the same family, the plant's going to be stronger, and a lot of times these bugs and pests go after weak plants. So they may not be interested in the new plant in the new soil because it's a stronger plant. So,
And the soil can be different even in that small an area.
It totally can. Yeah, it's actually pretty interesting, but it can. Please.
When we were doing our community garden class, we were told, and a lot of us did it, and see how put marigolds in between things, which seem to keep.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. Marigolds are a great pest deterrent in general, whether that's from rabbits or bugs. I don't know why. I don't know the science behind it, but I've heard that as well.
And it worked, and it was so pretty too with the
Yeah.
color.
Yeah, and they're tough plants. They stick around for a while.
And they attract pollinators.
And they do, yeah. So the opposite of crop rotation is something called monoculture. Is anyone here not familiar with that term? Okay, so monoculture is just the practice of planting the same thing in the same soil season after season after season. So if anyone here ever goes, travels down Illinois or goes up to Wisconsin, Indiana, and you see these big stands of beautiful green corn. If you were to look at their soil, the soil's like sand. Because they're planting corn year after year after year, it's not soil anymore. It's, they've totally depleted, whatever nutrition or anything is in that soil. And, so cultivation of a single crop in a different area. This is what happens when you do that. Your soil ends up looking like that, but you end up having a reliance on chemical fertilizer and pesticides. So now the way corn is grown, It's planted in the ground, but the dirt is only an anchor for the roots. The roots aren't feeding, so all of the nutrition is applied, chemically, whether that's from airplanes or sprayers or whatever, but they also need quite a bit of pesticide because like I was telling you before about the bugs going after weaker plants, because this corn is inherently weaker, bugs will go after it and they have to douse it in pesticides just to kind of keep the plant alive. So monoculture is, they actually call it conventional growing because that's how crops are grown in the US. But it's a bad way to do it, and you don't have to do that in your own garden. So I was talking about the families of crops. You don't have to know necessarily individual crops that can follow each other. Just think in terms of families because they all feed the same and they all have the same pests and they all grow the same. So here are just the basic families, and I'm not using their scientific names because they don't necessarily match up with the name of the plant. But onions are a family, and that's onions, scallions, leeks, garlic. All of those are in the same family. Chives is in the onion family. Nightshades, or you could call them just shades, but tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, and eggplants. They all have the same problems, they like the same temperature, they like the same type of sunshine, and they all get the same types of bugs. One year I grew quite a bit of eggplant, and I did a small experiment of growing regular potatoes. And this Colorado potato beetle came in for the potatoes, and when they were done with my potatoes, they saw the eggplant. And they did that because they're in the same family, and they kind of attract the same bugs. So your cold crops, I just kind of refer to anything in this group as cabbage, because they literally grow exactly the same. And by growing exactly the same, I know that it's going to be a heavy nitrogen feeder, and I know that it's going to generally kind of deplete the soil because it really does take a lot to grow for the cabbage family. You can overcome that by just adding a little bit of compost. It doesn't take much, but for what it takes from the soil, it's actually quite a bit more than most crops. So this I just kind of think of the squash family, but it's melons, it's cucumbers, winter squash, summer squash, pumpkins, zucchini. Your zucchini and your summer squash, they grow kind of like a big bushy plant, not necessarily a vining plant, but they're still in the same family, they still eat the same, and they still attract the same bugs. So your roots, carrots, beets, and parsnips. That's really about it. Carrots and beets aren't technically in the same family, but they require the same type of growing conditions, and they really do react similarly in the growing conditions. So, and then your greens, spinach and lettuce. A lot of people have asked me in the past, why don't I include arugula in with the greens? Arugula is cabbage. If you were to hold an arugula seed right next to anything else in the cabbage family, they all look the same. So arugula actually grows more like a cabbage and does get the same types of bugs. So it's not really in the greens family, although you eat it that way.
Do you put the herbs as part of greens?
I think it really depends. Like if you're talking parsley, cilantro, yeah, I would put those as like greens. If I was talking about basil, I would kind of put that closer to how growing tomatoes are. They're real sensitive. Other herbs, I didn't grow as much on a big level. So please.
Rutabaga and underroots as well, turnips.
Rutabaga and turnips are cabbage, believe it or not.
Okay.
Yeah, so they have a kohlrabi as cabbage as well. But rutabagas are in the cabbage family, and they just get that big stem, but they get this big cabbage-looking plant. So it's just that we eat a different part of it. Does that seem pretty clear? Does anyone have any questions about that? Please.
I know you said that the coal category takes a lot of nitrogen, and then all those different categories do all those other things, like take the pests and all that. Is there other things that the categories do, like does one put in something, a lot of something, and other, like can you say what?
Yeah, so like I had said, and I do have a slide coming up, to kind of give you an idea of what different families do, but onion family, generally makes it so that the weeds are suppressed after you pull them off. Tomatoes don't really add anything to the soil, except their roots. Anything in the pea or bean family adds a lot of nitrogen because of the way their roots are. They store nitrogen on the outside of the roots. So a lot of times people who would grow corn or grow cabbage family would follow it immediately with green beans or peas or something like that. So what's taken out is put back. But those are kind of the big ones, really.
Where do peas and beans fit in these categories?
I didn't really put them in here. I didn't really, think of them as much in terms of. I would put them under a category of legumes, but when I've talked to people about it before, people generally haven't wanted to grow giant stands of peas, because you get like 4 pea pods per plant, and it's just not a lot. But thinking about them, they're legumes. They add nitrogen.
Same with green beans?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
peas
you
and
give a
beans.
lot of green beans.
Yeah.
You
No.
don't get 4
That's
pods.
true. I should have added it as a category.
And you said it fits where?
It would be its own category of legumes. Yeah.
Where do artichokes fit?
I don't know, but when you grow the plants, it looks like it could be cabbage. I mean, it's a big, beautiful plant, but I don't know. I've never grown them, so
Yeah.
it seems like a lot of work to have this gigantic plant for this little baseball size. So I never tried it, but.